Welcome back to the Daily Dope. I'm your friendly commentator. I try to be. Brandon Strong over here. You can find me on Twitter at the Daily Dope Show. Just take the O out at the end. It's still the Daily Dope Show, just without the O at the end. You can dig me up on Facebook too, but I'm not going to tell you how to do that. You can figure that out on your own. I had to revisit this study for a couple of reasons. Alright, I know I did a video a couple days ago or a week ago or whatever about this study from the Rand Corporation. That's the study, wherever it is, that study there. So I did this video about it, and I feel like it was a pretty strong video, you know. And I do videos about the opioid crisis all the time, and it's not the most popular subjects of my videos. Like if you go back down back in my little area where you can look down the list of all my videos and see the views, you'll notice that the ones about the opioid epidemic are really scant. Like I basically don't even hardly have an audience at all for those videos. I mean, under 50 sometimes, between 50 and 100 views, and I don't care, you know. I'll still make these videos. It's an important topic to me for a lot of reasons. All right, now when you talk about veterans that are kind of bottlenecked into, you know, doing opioids for their pain, no matter how minuscule or it is, as long as it's chronic pain, here, take some Vicodins. I was that guy back in '94, all right? And the VA told me at the time that if they caught marijuana in my piss or my blood or anywhere in my body, then I would be kicked out of their treatment and I would have no recourse. And they might even kick me out. They might even petition to take away my 20% disability. So whatever, you know, I mean, I have been down that road. I could tell you all about my opioid experience. All right. Like I actually was, you know, had a little bout with heroin right after I got out of the Army in '94. And the reason I quit heroin abruptly, instantly, cold turkeyly, was because one day, after I got home from work with my coworker, actually we wasn't even at home. We went to this house that was next door to the teen center, because that's where he lived, is at the teen center, and the house next door was kind of like a flop house. And we basically split up the heroin to equal shots and both shot it, and the next day I woke up next to him and he was dead. It was like a highly concentrated dose. We weren't expecting it. And yeah, that experience was pretty bad. But then I started doing it again for some reason. Somebody I had met, one of my good friends, that I met him and he became a good friend, and then I found out he was an addict. And really I kind of was just a little bit of an enabler at first, and then I just kind of slowly got back into it, started doing it again. And of course, this is when I don't know, I can't really justify it. There's no way I can. And I wasn't doing it very much. Like I wasn't on the daily grind of it then. But it ended bad. I ended up ODing. This situation was that I died and he drove me to the hospital and basically just dropped me off, and I almost pretty much didn't make it. But I'm here now as a survivor of that to say that this shit is bad, all right? And I'm not even going to blame my heroin bullshit that I did on, you know, pain or the VA or anything that has to do with fucking medicine. That was just me being a dipshit. Both times. Especially when I was younger. That was like just purposeful recklessness. So I highly don't recommend that shit, no matter how old you are, because it's just not worth it. You're not invincible. Waking up dead's never fun, especially if you don't actually come back. having said all this, there's been kind of a resurgence of this topic lately because, quite frankly, there's a debate going on as to whether marijuana is even really like anything that's worth looking into. And of course it is. And so is fucking kratom. And you know, I get it. I understand that the FDA only likes to hang out with people that can patent their medicines, and so they're not into this natural whole plant shit. No, I know all this shit. I know about corrupt governments, and I know all this other shit that you're supposed to know and all that. And I also know about the whole way that they tabulate these deaths. All right, so somebody in my comment section had pushed back against this notion that 64,000 people died from opioid deaths last year. Actually, it's 2016 when that number that's when 64,000. So now the thing is I see how I looked at the raw numbers on this. You know, I mean, I look at daily raw numbers, I look at weekly raw numbers, I look at raw number resamples where they look across several weeks and tell you like trends about it and stuff. I mean, I've looked at this data probably more than most people watching this video. I pretty much can guarantee you that. And one of the things that I didn't like about the way that they come up with the number 64,000 is the fact that, yeah, of course, if someone died from fentanyl mixed with benzodiazepine and they had 800 milligram ibuprofens and about 3 different other kind of prescription pills, and they chalk that off as a opioid death. Hey man, they also count that as a benzodiazepine death and maybe even a complication of interaction death. That's just the way the CDC operates. I can't fucking change their methodology. But the thing you got to understand about their methodology is it hasn't changed. No one can change it. It ain't changing, and it hasn't changed. It's been the same for, I think, about 35 years when it comes to these overdoses. If I'm not mistaken, if you go back 50 years, it wasn't even the CDC that looked at this stuff, and there was no way to keep track of any of it. So any data that goes past 35 years is kind of iffy, but if you're going back 50 years, you're not going to find anything but just general press, like releases of estimates. And there's always been this issue, accidental deaths, and it happens from prescription pills and non-prescription pills, and it doesn't even, it could have just been they died from a natural cause, but they had the pill in their body, so they count that. And that's, you know, this person I'm talking about that was in my comments section pointed this article out. And it says something about determining a drug overdose death. Difficulties, or I can't see what that word is, but whatever. Yeah, difficulties, I think, in determining drug overdose death. And it's true. You know, when somebody dies, they go there and they're like, okay, this person pretty much died of a natural cause at the coroner, and then the CDC calls in and they're like, hey, guess what? We need you to just go ahead and test this person and see what the content of pharmaceuticals were, because they were this kind of patient or that kind of patient, or that they knew that they were on this kind of drug or that kind of drug, or maybe they don't even know at all. This is kind of the federal reporting. So when they do reports for federal, and this doesn't happen on all deaths, so whatever I'm saying is all underreported, whether it's natural causes getting called opioid deaths or Xanax deaths or whatever, or whether it's nobody like even got reported at all that died, and they actually died of an opioid death, or they actually just died of natural causes even though they might have had opioids in their system still. You know, sometimes the old ticker just stops, guys, and it gets counted as an opioid death. So I'll give you that. I'll give you this, I'll give you that, and I'll give you everything else you want. But someone's going to have to show me specifically a good, detailed analysis as to why the number 64,000 is extremely bloated. I got to know that, because when I see this right here, the opioid epidemic in the U.S. kills an average of more than 150 people a day. When I see that right there, it's not that hard to believe. It's not that, I'm not sitting here thinking, well, they're counting somebody that got hit by a car, but he had a fucking Vicodin in him and he was in the passenger seat, like they do with weed deaths in the highway, the highway traffic safety reports. Well, it's not even them. Let's get it twisted. It's the Rocky Mountain specifically. The people that are putting together statistics and scare tactics and articles to ramp up hysteria and shit, that's one thing. But what we have going on here with this opioid thing is we do have a serious situation on our hands. And what people are not understanding, and that's why people are not really getting it when it comes to, like, they're thinking that hysteria is overhyped. And then there's other people that think, well, you're not really looking at the right numbers as far as the marijuana helping with the opioid crisis, or even just someone saying that this could happen and, correlated data, and they're sticking to their guns on it. They can do that. They can get away with that. But when you're trying to push the real narrative out there, nobody's going to buy into it, because it's not, I don't know, it doesn't fit their overall narrative. So when you're saying to me, and again, to go back to the person in my comment section, when you're saying that the government, or that to me, it's the opioid producers. The opioid producers are doing this. The government, they're all colluding to do this. I believe it. I don't have any reason not to, And while they're doing that, they're also trying to suppress kratom and marijuana so that the profits stay high on these opioids. Why the fuck? Who wouldn't know that? If you don't think I see that, you don't pay attention to what I'm talking about here very often. Because I talk about this opioid shit all the fucking time. I got like 20 clips just about it. At least, if not way more than that. When you try to tell me that, there isn't a fucking serious thing going on where people are dropping like flies, I don't believe that. And what nobody's mentioning is the fentanyl, the fentanyl factor. So before fentanyl really exploded in the mid-2000s, you didn't have any fucking real spikes in these deaths. It was just a gradual uptick. Every year you can see a predictable uptick that was slow and gradual. It wasn't level. It wasn't going down. It was up. It was going up, and it was going up slowly and gradually. That has a lot to do with the heroin and the fucking overprescribing. The overprescribing was pretty much some shit that happened because of certain laws that were passed. And we know that now. And people that were involved in that are basically, if you look at their open secrets page on the internet, you'll notice that they're fucking just swimming and almost drowning in big pharma money. None of this shit's really that hard, guys. None of it is that hard at all. All right, this is all just really rich corporations crushing us. They don't give a fuck about people dying. They don't give a fuck about politicians and what they're saying. They don't care if Sessions decides to ramp up some fucking war against doctors and patients. None of this shit matters to them. They're making their money no matter what, because there's no limit on how many of these pills they can stamp out. And when it comes to fentanyl, since it's so easy to make, they just make fucking virtual fuck tons of it and do whatever they want with it, and then blame it on China. Now, is there a China? Am I saying that there's not a fucking problem with imported illegal fentanyl coming in from China? I'm not really saying that, but I'm saying that when they always blame the fentanyl on China, you got to start to fucking wonder, That's a very iffy proposition at best. So what I stumbled on here that really pissed me off is always WebMD, and I had to go over to their Twitter page because I couldn't find the article. They usually put an article out and then they'll post it on Twitter. Well, this time they shit the bed, and maybe on purpose, because they know that they're passing off garbage as they always are. While I was here, I went through their posts, and I went ahead and added my 2 cents to a bunch of them because, I mean, come on, why wouldn't you? This one here, for example, talking about how many brain cells do adults grow per day. And I said, well, if you're using cannabinoids, you definitely grow more than 700, which was their highest possible number. And then I gave them an article that's actually from the National Institute on Health. You can't even, you know, when you're talking about people like WebMD, you're on the level of some propaganda that can't even be, you can't even grasp it in terms of, you know, whatever. But, you know, as you go through this, it's just ridiculous. Article after article of pure propaganda. Oh yeah, right here, this is the only thing close to it that I could find, so I went ahead and put a whole thread where I debunk this and tell them about that. Whatever. I mean, this is all garbage. It don't stop. It's just one after the other piece of propaganda. Maybe they got something good in here and something that's true. That's cool, but it's all to sell something else. And then you got this. Billy Graham died. Don't have anything to do with doctors or medicine or any of that shit. Just somebody that died. And then right under that, we have kratom. Oh, it's got salmonella in it. Be careful. See, that's the kind of bullshit they're pushing here. Just propaganda. Nothing else. That's all. And so anyway, their article that they pushed today was about these 2 studies that debunked some medical marijuana myths. Released by these guys, the Addiction Journal, the Society for Study of Addiction. Now, I commend these guys for studying addiction, but again, I hearken to give them credit for this garbage. It's like they wanted to make it so I couldn't go out there and just totally throw them under the bus. So they did this thing where they looked at the studies. Yeah, let's just get rid of WebMD. Who cares? So these studies focused on teen use, and the line is, this will prompt teens. So basically they're saying that teen use, after they studied it, it really hasn't been a significant increase enough to be noteworthy, which is still kind of leaning towards, oh, it did cause an increase, but we're not going to talk about it because it's not like we can't freak you out with it, so we're not going to go into it. But we're still going to lean towards it did an increase. But, you know, I give you credit where credit is due, I guess. Now, the other one is talking about how does medical marijuana reduce opioid overdose deaths by offering a less risky method of pain management, blah, 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 blah. And what they're saying there is, well, let's just read what they're saying there. Here, the evidence is not clear but weak, but being rooted in ecological studies whose results have never been confirmed through more rigorous methods. I guess what they're saying about ecological is that they're talking about these have always been done in studies where you could find medical marijuana. So you haven't studied this in a place like Alabama where they don't have medical marijuana. I mean, why would you? They don't have fucking medical marijuana. So how you going to study that? You're just going to like hope that medical marijuana is going to make it so there's less opioid deaths in Alabama? That doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Anyway, I'm not even trying to like critique this article in this video, but I'm just pointing out this bullshit. So anyway, although those studies show a correlation over time between the passage of medical marijuana laws and opioid overdose death rates, they do not provide any evidence that the laws caused the reduction in deaths. You can't mandate a reduction in opioid deaths. I know that's not what they said, but it just sounded kind of silly. So you're talking about the correlative studies. There's now that when it comes to this thing where they're like, does medical marijuana reduce opioid whatever, and all the way up to deaths? And there's several studies now about that. In fact, the one that just came out is the most inclusive study because it studies all the studies. There you go. This right here, I don't know what it is, but they're looking at the studies and they're coming up with a different conclusion, I guess. So although those studies show a correlation over time between the passage of medical marijuana laws and opioid overdose death rates, shouldn't that be enough for you? Like, isn't that correlation, like, that we don't get correlation equals causation, do we? We certainly don't. We never do. Now you guys can take like the HID, the high intensity drug trafficking area studies, where I keep mentioning them because that's the ones that people are like, they always go to. Politicians, reefer madness spewing press people or whatever, they always break out the HIDTA and be like, boom, checkmate, increase in traffic deaths, increase in teen use, weed spilling out of the borders everywhere. And it's like all those things, they pad the numbers and do bullshit. All right. And when it comes to the studies on that they're doing, they're all correlation equals causation. Every fucking one of them. It's the most dishonest thing you've ever read in your life. It's so dishonest that they put disclaimers at the beginning of all their citations and articles and be like, you know what? We're not going to lie. This doesn't really prove anything. It's just, hey, look, they legalized marijuana and traffic rates, crash rates went up. The insurance companies say that shit too. Oh, look, they legalized marijuana, more insurance claims. What's the fuck? Did you look at any of those insurance claims and see if marijuana was involved at all? No. Well, then what the fuck are you talking about? It's just scare tactics. So, but when you correlate something important like this, we can't do it. We gotta know more. So they do not provide any evidence that the laws caused the reduction in deaths. In fact, several recent studies have shown that chronic pain patients who use cannabis do not lower doses of opioids. All right, I'm going to go back to my own personal history one more time because I feel like this is a very personal video now. Because I told God knows who about my fucking experience dying on opioids. Waking up with a catheter in my shit. 30 hours of sleep after dying. But we'll go back to before that, and we're talking about opioids and being prescribed opioids and what medical cannabis had did for me. So not only did I break my neck in the military, but then years down the road, after being on opioids for about 4 years for my pain, I started to, this is before medical marijuana was a thing in Michigan, for sure. This is like 1998. California just legalized medical marijuana. I was a grower, and I also knew people from California that would come and bring medical marijuana from California. So I was getting BC bud and California bud from Humboldt and the up north outdoor California bud. And it, basically I was pretty much, that's when I started my medical marijuana use, basically, is about 1998. From that point on, I was using medical marijuana only for pain. I had just totally, like, within the first 6 months of not bullshitting around about the medical marijuana use, I stopped going to the VA so I wouldn't have to worry about them burning my piss test or whatever blood test, and then trying to get rid of my 20% disability, which took me like 2 years to fight for after I got thrown out. After I'm not going to get into the details, but anyway, I will have to say that the reason I broke my neck was their fault. I can say that legally, and I'm not lying or throwing anybody under the bus or anything. So anyway, I'm going to vouch for the fact that it does lower opioid doses, because as I started using the medical marijuana, I started using less opioids. And as I basically got in line with never running out of medical marijuana and concentrates, basically I never used another opioid pill again by about, we're talking 2001, completely off of opioids altogether. So from 1994 to 2001, I was using opioids, not really that much, I mean, they would give me At first they were giving me 90 a month of Darvocet, which I don't really consider that much of an opioid. But then when they started giving me Vicodins, it was only 30, and then they moved me up to 60. I was always on 7.5s or whatever of hydrocodone. So, it's whatever, man. There was times when I didn't have the pills because I couldn't get to the hospital and get my prescriptions refills or whatever. And it was some of the worst times of my life, because I would be on level 10 pain and there was nothing I can do about it. So I'm not a big fan of opioids for chronic pain. Now I understand that there is some situations where there's really no choice in the matter, and I feel you there. I'm not dismissing that, and I'm not saying you don't need opioids. And no, if you need opioids, you need opioids. I'm not that guy, dude. Like, if you watch my videos about this topic, I'm very fucking consistent. And the reason I'm very consistent is because I've been through this shit. And the reason I've been through this shit is because I suffer from chronic pain. All right? That's why you'll see me smoking joints like on these long ass videos sometimes, because it's the only fucking way I can make it through it, man. This shit sucks sitting here. Not really, I'm joking. So finally, yeah, I call bullshit on that. The fact that several recent studies have shown that chronic pain patients who use cannabis do not lower their doses of opioids. That's just propaganda, pure and simple. And if you don't think that's true, I just gave you my story, and I'm pretty sure that there's millions of stories like that. And not only that, but I'm a caregiver in a medical marijuana program where I have 5 patients. All 5 of them were on some kind of opioid for chronic pain. And let's see, they're all over the age of at least 35. All right. And the age range goes all the way up to 70. So I don't know what you want, man, from me, but every one of those patients quit their opioids altogether. So that's total bullshit, man. Quit fucking lying. And finally, there are more plausible reasons for the reduction in addiction, so they say. So that what they're saying is, this is what they're saying. They're saying there's a limitation of the evidence. So since we don't have enough evidence that cannabis or legalizing that is going to lower opioid doses or death or any of that shit, since we don't have enough evidence to back that up, and like you've seen from the Rand Corporation, who did the most extensive study that there is to date about this, and they said, yeah, it does, and here's how, and if you have more dispensaries, you have less deaths and all this other shit. So you don't fucking, you're being an intellectually dishonest piece of shit, quite frankly, when you say, given these limitations of evidence, you didn't look at the right studies, you ain't doing enough studies, you're not looking at the evidence. So he says it's premature to recommend the expansion of access to medical cannabis as a policy to reduce opioid overdose risks in the United States and Canada. That's exactly what they want you to say. And who wants you to say that? The people that make the opioids. The people that make the fucking other pills that get you off the opioids, which are, guess what? More opioids. The premature adoption of this could displace policies for which there are far better evidence of effectiveness in reducing opioid overdose deaths, namely increasing access to methadone and buprenorphine-assisted treatment for opioid dependence. So your solution is to keep people alive by stringing them out on opioids that don't kill them because you're giving them measured doses of things that don't kill you. Unless you somehow take an overdose, which the way they do methadone, there's no way that you got to go there and get it, and then you're done for the day. There's no way you can get high after that. And then the same thing happens with the buprenorphine, which is Suboxone or whatever the fuck. So, reducing rates of imprisonment for opioid possession and low-level dealing, and distributing naloxone to users and family members to reverse opioid overdoses. Wow. So I guess I'm with you on that. Let's not imprison people for opioid possession and low-level dealing. That's nonsense, but unfortunately that's not how Trump wants to run the drug war. And distributing the overdose cure, naloxone, to users and families, so that when someone does overdose, you can keep them alive to keep them on more opioids. They don't want to lose customers over this shit. I mean, can you see how disingenuous and grotesque this shit is that they're saying? Unfucking believable, man. That's what this addiction study's about. It's about keeping addicts on low-level, controlled addictions that are still opiates, still things that they manufacture in their labs, and still things that they can manufacture unlimited amounts, and they want more people on it. So, I don't know. That's all I got for that part. I'm not going to really talk much more about anything here. We're going to watch this real short video. And that's it, guys. I might have a thing or two to say if this video, excuse me, but we'll see.
The opioid epidemic in America kills more than 115 people every single day. Researchers at the RAND Corporation wanted to know if medical marijuana can help lower the number of overdose deaths.
They conducted what they called the most detailed study ever on the topic. K2's Joe Douglas joins us live. And Joe, researchers say the link between medical pot and fewer opioid deaths is complex.
Deb, they say it all comes down to execution. As you know, opioids include drugs like heroin and prescription painkillers like OxyContin. The federal government says the misuse of them remains an epidemic nationwide.
There's some evidence.
David Powell is an economist for the RAND Corporation, a major global nonprofit policy think tank that does research and analysis.
We were interested in understanding, when states adopt medical marijuana laws, do they see a reduction in opioid-related overdoses?
Previous studies suggested that's the case, but Powell says he wanted to go further.
We were interested in understanding the underlying mechanisms behind those reductions that have previously been observed. And we found that actually we do see large reductions in opioid-related overdoses in states which have medical marijuana dispensaries.
And other states that take a more restricted approach to medical pot, not allowing dispensaries, he says you don't see the same effect.
There's some evidence that suggests that medical marijuana is an effective pain management tool for many of the same types of pain that opioids are often used for. But medical marijuana doesn't come with the risk of overdose.
Powell's study looked at data throughout the country from 1999 to 2013.
It takes about 20 minutes or so to start feeling the effects of it.
He says medical marijuana's impact on overdose deaths was reduced around 2009 after the Obama administration asked states to more tightly regulate medical weed. He did not look at the effect of legalized recreational marijuana. He also says medical marijuana does not seem to impact overdose deaths from illegal drugs like heroin and fentanyl.
Powell adds that although medical marijuana does have a gateway effect on some people who use it the first time, leading them to harder drugs, for many more people, it eventually reduces the number of overdoses. Live in News Control, Joe Douglas, K2 News.
A deputy.
That's all we got, man. That's all we got. That's all we can have. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.